Digression.
No. I'm not having it.
I mean, is it food we're talking about?
Definitely.
It's very juicy.
Come on.
But I'm just stating facts.
What were we talking about?
What's up, guys? Salut. My name is Alex, and I make food videos on YouTube.
Hi, my name's Josh, and I'm Alex's editor, friend, counterpart. Did we say that those are all relevant?
I mean, all of that. How are you, Josh?
I'm very good. How are you doing, man?
I'm very good, man. Very good. I've got a very controversial subject. In fact, a subject that you brought to the table, to be honest. In all fairness, you brought that up. This fight is going to be on your shoulders at the end of the day.
Listen, I'm just aware. Maybe I should put this in at the start. Look, Alex, you know, I've got a lot of respect for you. I've got a lot of time for you. You're one of my favourite guys. But I just feel like this is a subject that I'm very emotional about. And I might weigh in on pretty heavy. So all I'm saying is, you know, whatever I'm saying, take it with a pinch of salt.
Man, this is such a wrong start. I'm already in such a fighting mood. Go on, bring it on. I've got all my nails out.
Well, look, I think this is, if anything, this might be the one thing that we fall hardest on either side of the divide about. And it's wine versus beer.
There we go. That's called a low blow.
A low blow? Why is that
I think so.
Blow?
I think so, because you know I'm going to be standing on the wine side.
Of course, and I'm going to be standing on the beer side. It's got
But I've got surprises for you.
Okay.
I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play it fair. Okay.
Okay, there's going to be some secret weapons coming out that I'm not sure about.
I think so. It's going to be an ugly fight, I think. Okay, go on. Bring it on. So you say wine versus beer. What's the point behind it? Which one is superior? That's what you want? That's how.
I mean, I know the answer to that question.
Ooh.
It's beer.
Okay.
100%.
Obviously.
But
obviously.
Would you like me to state my case, or do you want to ask me questions and I will put any questions that you've got to bed?
Hold on a second. Just 1 second. So you're saying wine versus beer. Let's just define the challenge a bit better first.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
When you say wine, what do you mean? Like white wine, all the wine, white wine, red wine, fizzy wine, Italian wine, French wines, sparkling wines.
They're all made from
ice
grapes,
wine?
Aren't they?
Ooh, okay.
So then
I can sense a little aggressiveness in all this, but yeah.
I told you I was going to come in swinging.
I love this. Go on, bring it on.
Look, here's the thing. If you want
fermented grape beverage.
I'm going to let you define what wine is, okay? Now, to me, all those things you've just said are wine, right? And because they all come from the grape. Now, I would even say that say that wine could be extended beyond that. So let's say, for example, if you make a wine from blackberries, people would call it country wine. But I don't see why. This is the thing. I think that wine lovers would go, oh, no, that's not wine. That's outside of wine.
That's the same discussion we had a million times ago with tomatoes. That's just that's a bias. That's a subjective point of view. And yet we tend to call wine the fermented grape juice.
Okay. I'm happy to go with that as a...
Let's just go with this one. Because if we make a fight between elderflower beer and
yeah, I'm with you.
Mulberry wine, people are just going to be out. Who are these lunatics?
Well, I'll tell you what, Alex. This may be the only point in this podcast that happens, but I agree with you. Let's go. Okay. Let's go for that.
Cool
Qualification.
So wine, yeah, the pretty standard definition. So fermented grape juice. I'm just trying to think if I forgot something about the process, because I know it's
no, you didn't, because it's that simple. That's the thing with wine.
Wow.
That's all it is.
Wow.
You take some grapes, you leave them, you have wine.
Okay, cool. You know what? I'm gonna adopt. I might adopt a different stance in this fight. Something more accepting, more yin and yang than what you would expect from.
You're gonna make me look like a fool though, because I'm gonna get.
Yeah, I think so. That's my point.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Go on.
I'm aware that
beer.
In this particular situation, I'm the one that's going to look a little bit crazy and a little bit over-emotional.
What do you mean? Do you mean it's just me happening to be the other character in all the other podcasts we shot?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. That's cool.
Are you suggesting that I'm not the voice of reason?
You are. Go on. Please define beer.
Beer, okay. I would say if you're going to give it's fermented grape juice,
looking liquid. Yeah, go on.
Let me say then. I suppose beer is a fermented grain. Now, does it have to be barley? Because you can get wheat beer.
It's already pretty rough as a definition, if you ask me. But yeah.
I would say that that a beer.
Yeah.
All right. I tell you what. Let me pull out the full one, and then you can tell me if I need to contract it.
Okay.
A beer is a grain that has been digested using enzymes and then turned into a sugary liquid, which is then fermented. So, for example, it could start off with barley. It could start off with wheat.
Okay.
But either way, they have to be malted and then fermented.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the malt is always important with beer.
This is the thing, and this is part of my argument. The process of making beer is so much more complex than the process of making wine.
Possibly,
Not
and yet,
possibly.
have you?
Definitely.
Hold on. Definitely. Oh, that's quite a bold statement.
Yes, it is.
Let's see how strong that statement is.
Listen.
Have you ever? Hold on a second.
Wait.
For the record, so I have made a series called "How to Make F Wine," French wine,
Yes.
or freaking wine. If you
Yes.
want. Which means that I have dipped my toes in winemaking.
Yeah.
Second series, I made a series called "How to Make Supermarket Beer." So how to make some lame beer, but still I dipped my toes in the beer making process.
Right.
When did you try to make wine?
I've made wine before, but not from grapes. Okay.
Well, it doesn't count in this case because we've made it very clear at the beginning of this episode that wine, in this episode at least, is going to be defined like fermented grape juice. So
Okay.
I'm just saying assessment.
All right. In that case, then, let me throw something down onto the gauntlet. Beer,
Okay.
in that case, then, my definition would be this. Beer must be malted barley at the very least. It could have other elements of wheat and other things. Malted barley that has been fermented, right, into a wort or a liquid mash, and then with the addition of hops. And in that definition, you haven't made a beer.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. I still have some, basic understanding of how beer is made.
Yes.
Well, when you say two things, when you say making wine is less complicated than making beer, I would accept that if you had really made wine before. Truth is, and you just said it, you never made it. So that's a false point in my mind. Second,
But you've never made beer. If you're using that as an argument, then you have never made beer by your definition of what it is.
I made sour beer somehow.
Yeah, saying somehow. Well, I made a wine somehow. Sure, it wasn't made from grapes.
Yeah, okay.
Your beer
All
was
right.
made from Weetabix.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm fine with this. So that's a draw on this one. Second, way more important, way more valid as a point. You're implying that because beer is more complicated to make, it's more valuable than something that would be, hypothetically easier to make.
I'm not actually. I'm not actually.
Oh, you're
implying
not?
that. No,
Okay,
I am
'cause
saying.
I could sense that, and maybe the listeners could sense that as well.
They
I don't know.
probably are. Listen, I was saying this. Wine, as a process, is much simpler than beer as a process. At its core, at its fundamental. Now, obviously, you can elevate anything to an artisanal level and make a process complicated. But what I'm saying is, if you were to make a bog standard wine and a bog standard beer, the beer is a more complicated process. It involves more technological advancements. Wait.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say that I think because of that, beer is better. Just because it's a more complicated process, I'm not saying it's better. It's better regardless of the process. Hey, look.
I'm taking notes because I've got so many things to say about this.
Also, let me bring something up here. Now, when you were doing your beer series, right, I cannot remember, for the life of me, I can't remember whether this was on camera or whether this was something that was said to the side, but I remember...
Yeah, we have an NDA, a strong NDA. You can't disclose any daily that hasn't been published. It wouldn't be fair.
Listen, I remember being in that pub with you and the guys from the Craft Beer channel.
Yeah, okay.
And you said something to this effect. Now, I'm paraphrasing, so I'm not saying this is exactly what you said. You said something along the lines of, I really love beer, however, compared to wine, the process is nowhere near as complicated. Now, you dropped that bomb, and me and Johnny and what's the other guy's name? Brad. There was a sharp intake of breath in that room. A Frenchman in an English pub claiming that wine was a more complicated process than beer.
I did that, I think.
There was a vacuum in that room. The air got sucked out of that room. Now
they told me that this was a very peaceful pub and no fight were to be taken in that night. So I was in a safe spot.
You were in a safe spot, and you know nobody did anything. But that's to the testament of British passive aggression.
Flag. Yeah, makes sense.
It's weird. Anyway, look. My point being, I suppose, is that it's weird. I obviously have an emotional attachment to beer. That I was like, I remembered that, and I thought. But you're right. Okay, let me concede this point. You're right. I don't think that just because it's a more complicated process, which I definitely would argue that it absolutely is, doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll concede you on that point.
The premise of that argument is just like, so why would it be better then? Well, for you, why would it be better? I'm genuinely interested in knowing why.
Okay. Beer, we can't discard this fact, okay? I think culturally, where I've grown up, beer plays a very different role to wine. Beer is much more, it's the thing that everybody drinks, it's the everyman drink, everybody has beer, it's the main thing that most people drink, and wine is something that's a bit sort of posh, a bit exotic, maybe not these days, but when growing up it was more posh, more exotic, something that you only had with food, whereas we have a whole culture around beer that is kind of like it's drunk by itself in a social environment. It's tied to good times, it's tied to the pub where you have fun, it's tied to coming of age things. There's a lot culturally that's tied to beer that isn't to wine. So
that's amazing what you just said.
Go ahead.
It's amazing because you're basically cutting the grass under your own foot. You're cutting the branch on which you are sitting on. You're saying beer is related to culture. It's like related to home for you. It's got a homey feeling.
Absolutely.
It's social. It's not posh. It reminds me of, I hope not exactly of your childhood, but I'm not going to be judging anything.
Well, it does in a way. Even if I wasn't drinking it as a child, as in
exactly,
you know, I've always been aware of beer.
Makes sense, and it's the beverage that adults would share at social events. Well, this is just look at the thing from a broader angle, from a wider angle. I'm based in France. I was born in Paris.
Yeah,
I have the exact same memories as you have, but with wine, just translated with wine. Wine is the liquid that people have when they gather around family, homes, social events. Wine is the liquid that feels like home somehow for me. So it wouldn't be superior in that sense. The only thing is that from a cultural aspect, it's very hard to think of one being superior to the other, I feel.
No, and I agree.
For you, yes.
I agree.
Me,
it would
be wine.
It's about place, right? Now you can't grow wine grapes as far up where I live in this country. You can't grow them and make a good wine. So it makes sense that beer would be more popular drink in that sense.
And it also makes sense that the wine you had access to is, one, expensive if it's just imported, basically. Or if it's grown in the UK, I mean, considering the weather.
Exactly.
And it's not made for it.
Let me bring up something that I've just thought about.
Maybe you just had bad wine. I'm sorry to hear that. You had really, really bad wine.
And you have had terrible beer.
No, hold on a second. So you had Buckfast. Is that the name? Buckfast?
I've only ever tasted Buckfast. I've never drank it.
So you think that is wine? Oh, it's not wine by the way.
He says this. So you think that is wine? What have you been drinking? Peroni? You think that's beer? Do you?
I've been drinking so many English beers, so many beers from the UK. I've been educated to beers.
Yeah. Well,
especially through the guy who was with us at the pub, Johnny. From the craft beer channel. He just basically sent me lists of beers I should be drinking. I would say So obviously I was educated with the first one that I can remember was like the punk from Scotland.
Punk IPA, yeah.
Punk IPA, okay. And then I went to Pulluloid. No, is it Pulluloid? Then Camden Ales. Then so many beers, man. So many beers in the UK. And I discovered a whole world of beers in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And truth is, I loved them. I absolutely loved them. That's why I'm on the fence here.
Look,
I'm on two sides. I feel like we're comparing carrots and potatoes.
Well,
Potatoes being beer, obviously.
Oh, I see. What? So carrots are superior to potatoes now?
It's orange.
But you know what? Maybe that's the thing. To me, beer has this sort of down-to-earth, working man's thing that is very much like it's the beer is of the people, and wine seems to be this thing for the elite. Now, I agree that we're talking about the cultural thing again, and you've just said your experience growing up was very different, where wine was the thing that everybody was drinking.
Cheap. It's pretty cheap here.
Let me get back onto something I was going to raise a second ago. How far from Belgium are you? Where you've been brought up?
Not far away. I mean, just like probably 4 hours away.
So Belgium's interesting because it's not as if the terroir is that different to where
it is. Very different.
It is
extremely different.
All right. Well, the landscape then. Do you think that they're like weather and the climate and those sort of things are different?
I think so. Yeah.
Really?
It's very connected to the north of France, and the north of France is a place where they brew beer instead of wine.
No, I know.
Nobody's making wine.
Take that out of the equation of what they actually do. What I'm saying is, realistically, say for example, all right, Spain has a lot of red wine. The weather in Spain compared to the weather in the UK is vastly different. It's very, very different. Right?
Understood.
Is the difference between the weather and the climate and the that sort of thing from Paris to Belgium, is it that different?
No.
Okay.
But we do not make wine in Paris. Wine is never made in Paris. We make wine only in the south of France.
So here's the thing then. Maybe actually, given that you have been brought up somewhere that is really not that good for growing wine grapes.
Yeah, but the wine distribution in France is like you can find wines from all over France, everywhere in France, basically. I'm just saying the climate between Paris and Belgium is not that different. So yeah, it's a bit weird that we don't.
Well, all right. Anyway, so look, here's my point: it's interesting that Belgium's basically like the beer capital of the world. It's pretty hard to argue that it doesn't have the sort of longest standing beer tradition out of any country, but it also has a bit of a the Champagne region is not too far from there, right?
Not far. Not far.
It does have a kind of tradition of both. It's an interesting meeting point, I think, of the two things.
Does it? Maybe, yeah, possibly. Why not? Why not? Possibly. I think with white wine, people might less be looking for... people might be looking for different weather conditions than for red wine. And that's why with champagne they can grow it in like sort of the north of France. Not exactly the north, but still norther than what you would do for red wine. And also, like, red wine basically is mostly grown in the south of France.
Yeah, because it's a hot climate thing, right?
Exactly. It needs the sun, basically. Something you guys are not so much acquainted to.
We're not.
Sun. Have you heard about this? Vitamin D.
We get our vitamin D through the beer. The barley takes it in through the little amount of sunlight that it can, and we brew it into a vitamin D drink.
I think it's... So, let me just share something personal here. I love wine. As you said earlier on, wine reminds me of home. And I had some super cheap wine with my friends as not a teenager, but an 18 years old teenager.
Let's just qualify that. Don't be drinking if you're under the legal age.
Exactly, very important. And I also had some decent wine at the table with my parents or with friends as an adult, as an older adult. Sorry, as an older adult. So I have tasted and experienced a whole array of emotions and liquids, all called wine. They all remind me of home. If I ever want to spend a special moment with my wife, with my family, with my friends, there will be wine involved.
Okay.
And beer is amazing. I love beer, and I discovered beer really when I was working back and forth with the UK. As I was doing back and forth with the UK, with London, I just discovered beer, and I didn't even know that beer was so big in the UK at first.
Really?
Then I started discovering. No, I was aware of beer in Belgium.
Uh-huh.
I was aware of beer in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
but then I slowly discovered that these were old markets for beer, and that the UK had a buzzing, emerging craft beer scene that was just fascinating.
This is the thing. We also, previous to that, had a long history of beer, but it kind of started to die out around the sort of 70s, 80s, 90s as we started drinking all these really commercial lagers. And it wasn't until craft beer came in and kind of revived a new scene, a new buzzing with, like you said, that there's a lot of excitement around it, that people started to go, oh, we have a beer history too, we've just forgotten about it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. So that's something I discovered along the way. But so beer started to gain some value in my mind. I just started to understand what the culture is, where it comes from, how do you make it. And so these are all the different styles of beer, and I was just amazed by all this, and yet I didn't grow up with it. So at the end of a hard day of labor, I would have a beer, never a glass of wine.
That's interesting.
Because it doesn't work for me. A glass of wine will never tame the thirst. It's just like, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. But weeknight with the friends, with the homies, just around the table, chandelier on the table. Those kinds of party nights.
I love the mix of saying the homies, implying this very laid back, kind of relaxed attitude. Then, a £700 bottle of wine.
But that's exactly what my friends would like. They have this very casual attitude, and yet I know that they love wine as well. So it's just like that bottle of wine, summarize, encapsulate somehow friendship and homey feeling, probably not only to France, but also to Italy and Spain, possibly.
It's very Mediterranean,
Italy, sure.
wine.
Yes, I think so. It's the Roman. The Roman brought it in. We use in France, we used to drink some sort of a beer called Cervoise.
Okay. What's that, like
very
a
close to
saison?
cerveza. Very close to cerveza in Spain. That's the same word, the same root.
Oh, yeah,
Like
okay.
some sort of I think it's tepid beer.
Tepid?
Beer that is served tepid, I think.
Okay.
So I
Sounds
have
delicious.
no idea. Yeah, exactly. That's why probably.
So what you're saying is, as a
the
country, you got colonized by the Romans, and you just threw out all of your culture and went, yeah, we'll have this wine.
Well, don't tell me you invented tomatoes and potatoes and corn. We all accept other influences from all
Very
over the
true.
country.
I was
It's
being
more
facetious.
Hey, and I didn't mention curry in the first place. But it's just about influences and how we adapt to them and how we modify them as well. So I feel like, Roman might have brought wine to France, and they sure did. But we brought it to the world somehow afterwards.
I guess so. I mean, wine technically. Do you know where wine originated, by the way? Like
I'm not sure.
From Georgia.
Georgia? Okay.
Yeah, they have more grape varieties in Georgia than anywhere else in the world, and they have like a sort of a real strong natural wine culture. That's another podcast. It's fascinating, that sort of world of wine with that. All right, so look, I think we both agree that culturally we're very much on our own sides because of the experiences that we've had growing up. Totally reasonable. I think anyone would be with whatever they've sort of grown up with.
Do you have pleasure when you drink wine? That's the problem. People can't see your face, but I can see it. You just made that face, like annoyed, confused, uncertainty.
Let me try and come up with an analogy for this, right? Sometimes I really enjoy drinking a wine, but it's only very occasionally. In the same way that sometimes I enjoy wearing a suit, but it's only at a wedding or at an occasion that's
Okay.
really big and grandiose and that sort of
Okay.
thing. The rest of the time, I don't wear a suit. I like to, like, beer to me is like a hoodie, like my favorite hoodie that I would put on. It's super comfortable. I like the way it looks. I feel at ease and free and myself with it. Whereas with wine, I can enjoy it, but it doesn't have the same thirst quenching qualities. And here's the other thing. Let's take all the culture, all the history, all the whatever
Yes.
out of it. On a
Yes.
fundamental level, I enjoy the taste of beer a hell of a lot more than I enjoy the taste of wine. Now there could
It's more,
could be an element to this that you're right. Actually, I don't think, and maybe this would be a good thing. Maybe you could educate me. I don't think maybe I have explored wines to the same extent that I've explored beers.
Oh,
But
100%.
let-
Knowing your beer expertise, you definitely didn't.
I would guarantee you this: if you were to take, right, a 12% imperial stout porter, thick, black, sweet, dessert-like liquid, that's a beer, right?
Okay.
Now, if you were to take that and contrast that to a American West Coast IPA, super hoppy, super fruity, super bitter, very light, pale, refreshing, they're worlds apart.
Yes.
I would challenge you
understand.
to try and find two wines that have that much difference in their taste and appeal. I feel like, here's the point I'm going to make, and feel free to destroy it, but I feel like beer has much more variety within it than wine does.
I think it's brilliant. I may have to agree with you on this one, because I feel like
Do you
it
feel
might
like
be
that's-
related to definition of beer. You can make beer with plenty different grains, where with wine you're stuck with vitis vinifera, so just grape.
But those two beers that I've just said, both use
Same grain.
same grain, malted barley, same bittering agent, both have hops in them. It's
I mean,
different process of those things.
There can be world of differences between two different wines, but I don't know if you can go that wide as the comparison you just made. I had both. I didn't have like that 12 black stout, but I had similar beers, I guess. And I had the double IPA like in the US. I can see like, okay, so these are, if I were to have a blindfold on, I would never guess these are related, any related. With wine, you can get drastic differences. For example, if you were to take, I don't know, an old red wine, bold and fruity and sunny and rich and on the fruit and heavy, and a mineral white wine and a champagne, for example. Clearly not the same vibe. One thing you could do, okay, so I'm no therapist, but this is a very wrong start for a sentence. I'm no therapist, but I'm
but
going
I
to
can
give you
tell
mental
you are a
advices. Exactly. No, but I'm thinking maybe one way to enter the wine world would be to travel to France or to Italy. Italy, let's go to Italy.
All right.
They are less snob than us.
Yeah, neutral ground.
Exactly, neutral ground. And just start with white wine instead of red wine. Oh, people always have this idea of, I mean, most people have the idea of wine being a red wine.
Yeah, I do, I would say.
Yeah, you say red wine is heavier than white wine and has less of the qualities you find sometimes in beer. With beer, I feel like clarity, simplicity, obviousness, refreshness. That's something you can find in white wine a lot. Especially like, for example, Eastern France. I know we said Italy, but I don't know Italian wine.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be able to mention them. But Western France, Alsace, very close to the border, and Germany, and Germany basically, and Slovakia, and all these countries, they have amazing dry wine. And I started only very recently to appreciate these. They have a completely different approach to them. It's just like, it's never going to be as thirst quenching, to paraphrase what you just said, as beer. Nobody can touch that, because one thing, bitterness. Wine have no bitterness, and bitterness is responsible for that amazing feeling at the end of a hot day. I would never ever go to wine at the end of a hot day, unless it's like rosé, which is just, it's a gimmick. I don't like rosé. I mean, there are some amazing rosé, but the rosé so pink wines that people enjoy in the summer. It's just like cheap wines that we have to drink when they are ice cold, because otherwise they're just not great. So beer is superior to wine when it comes to relief, I feel.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
simplicity sometimes.
So when do you think wine is superior to beer? What are the occasions that you would go? What?
Life. Life in general.
God. Life in general. Okay.
All the other moment, basically love, life, friendship.
All these words are screaming beer at me. You're saying
exactly.
these things.
That's what I mean, and that's why I don't think wine is superior. It's only superior for me. I know it's not superior for you, but I am willing to place a bet that I will find not one wine, but tons of different wine you will enjoy.
Okay.
First of all, because we will met people, we would met people who make them, which changes the thing drastically. And simple guys. Winemakers are just simple guys. Wine tasters are pricks. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
like, oh, I can sense a little rotten mulberry at the end of a whatever. It's just like, but winemakers, just fucking down to earth persons. They are dealing with the weather. They are dealing with everything.
And
it's just like.
Okay, so here's the other thing, I suppose, that like they would be more my people. Let me bring up one last point about what the other thing that maybe makes it difficult for me to enjoy wine. I was watching a film. It was on some sort of streaming service, right? And it's about this guy that kind of infiltrates the wine scene in America, right? Of all these people who are going to auctions and they're buying bottles of wine for $2,000, $4,000, $20,000. They're buying these old, that are coming from these old wine cellars in wherever, and they're really rich people with more money than sense buying all these wines. And he infiltrates that scene and he starts making, he starts replicating the bottles and making them up in his kitchen and just filling them with like a standard wine. And these people, I'm not saying that anyway, I'm just going to say, these people are buying it and they don't know the difference. They can't tell the difference. Even if they could, the fact that people are paying like silly amounts of money for wine, it puts wine in that territory that it's beyond a drink. It's a status symbol. It's a Ferrari. It's a Rolex. It's a. These are the things, and I have and always have had a sort of real chip on my shoulder with like the excesses of the rich into that realm of people where they're more obsessed with how they appear to have money than they are with its style of a content or whatever. And maybe in my brain there's a little bit of that with wine. I was watching a documentary, drinking a beer, watching these people pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for bottles of wine, and I thought this would never happen with beer.
Okay, hold on a second.
It would never happen with beer.
You bringing money, fair enough. Tell me about a good beer you like. Just name a beer that you really like, not the cheapest one, just a beer you really enjoy drinking.
There's a beer from...
And the price.
Okay. There's a beer from a brewery called Northern Monk in Leeds.
Northern Monk.
And it's called Eternal. It's an IPA. It's kind of... It's not a session ale, but it's very much like I could happily drink a few pints of that, and it's like... It's not too wacky, either sides of the taste profile. It's just a really good standard beer.
Northern Monk IPA. How much is it for a pint?
I'd say somewhere between £4 and £5.
4 and 5. So if it were to be a bottle of wine, that would cost a bit more. So that would be 7.5.
Okay.
About, because it's a bit more than a pint. Okay. Would you qualify Northern Monk IPA as
You can get much cheaper beer, but that's
yeah, but that's a good one.
It's a good one, and it's starting to border into expensive.
In terms of money, beer and wine cost exactly the same. I'm thinking
most
about a wine bottle that I like, let's say from the Rhône Valley, something not too cheap, not too expensive either. I would pay €8, €9 for a bottle of wine. That's you're at 7, 8.
Yeah,
that's the same price.
Okay, fine.
So they're on the same ground when it comes to
in the mid. Yeah,
somehow.
for the average person, yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is there are these extreme fringes where nobody has ever paid £2,000 for a bottle of beer.
I mean,
or 20,000.
Do they? Never? You think so?
I could.
Can I fact check this on the internet? Don't you think?
Go ahead.
Some stupid beer bottles retails for extreme prices?
Probably, but it's not the same as wine. Wine,
yeah, okay, fair
wine
enough,
is so much more expensive when it gets to the extreme.
There's a trading aspect to wine, which is weird.
Yeah, it goes
People
into that realm where the value is not
social
attached.
status. You're right.
The value is not attached.
No,
to the
it's
product.
attached to rareness, to exclusivity, to social status.
There we go.
Right.
Exclusivity, social status.
Yeah,
wine has a tendency to go into that.
But I don't drink these. I'm a normal person, and so are most people who drink wine. Just because there are lunatics in this world doesn't mean we all are. But the wine world is, yes, I think, infiltrated by this trading bad habits.
Yeah.
And people define the quality of wine through its cost. But that's something that happens in every industry. And I'm sure with beer, if I were to present you with 2 beers, I mean, maybe not you, because you're aware that I'm going to come in with a sneaky move, but somebody else, we tend to define things through their, public prices, retail prices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My mom, funny enough, so we were dining at a friend's house with my parents, and my mom is very straightforward. She has a good palate. She never brags about it. She's just simple with this. She loves food very much. She's got she's got a very receptive mind for food in general.
Mm-hmm.
And the host, brings up a bottle and says it comes from the year I was born. So it was like a 60 years old bottle of red wine from the Bordeaux region.
Oh, the year he was born?
Yeah, he was born.
I thought you were making a joke about how old you are.
No. He was born, sorry. And then he serves everybody. Everybody gets a glass of that slightly orangey liquid.
Okay.
It's like not purely red. It goes, we say tuile, which would be tile. The roof tiles somehow.
Terracotta.
Terracotta. It goes slightly terracotta. And I'm just looking at it, and I don't know anything about wine. I'm probably 19 years old when I had this bottle, this glass. And I'm just sipping it, and that's a good wine. It's amazing. Because it was presented to me as such. My mom just went like, I think there's a defect in this wine. It doesn't taste good. And everybody's like, are you mad? This is a very expensive bottle. She was just like, very simple. I'm just saying, just look at the color. Isn't that weird? Nobody says anything. And she's just like very down to earth with wine. And she's been the one selecting wines for my family. So I'm thinking maybe the wines we had at home were just good, straightforward wines made properly, but not too expensive. So maybe these are the wines I grew up with. Not saying I wouldn't be influenced by the price of a bottle if you stick it under my nose. But maybe the experience I had with wine wasn't so much about prices, but more about, does it taste good? Yeah, so it's a good wine. Taste. So
that's a good point, I think, though, actually. I think here's the other thing that I don't... that is a very good point, actually. Because when I go to the shop, I pick up a beer, right? And I read the description of what it tastes like. And I imagine what that might be. And I think, yeah, that sounds like something I might like. When I go to buy a bottle of wine, and this is, I can guarantee you, this is very common to a lot of British people at the least, if not
French people
other people
well.
across the world.
Yeah.
I look at the bottles of wine, and I see, that one was supposed to be 12 quid, but it's been knocked down to 8, so it must be good. So I get that,
you're right,
and I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for.
But it's the same case scenario for any French person I know. Most French person I know, they have unless they have tasted the thing first.
Yeah,
it's impossible to imagine what it would taste like. I think beer makes a better job at this. If I went to a grocery store and I see an IPA, well, I can imagine what it's going to taste like. Somehow I got an idea if it's gonna work with the thing that I wanted to eat. If there's a stout, well, I must be aware that this is not gonna. I mean, that's weird. You're very correct. Wine bottles are known to be bad at conveying informations.
I think that's the thing, though.
Especially in France, where they don't even include the grape variety. Where in the US and in many and on many bottles that I've seen in Italy, maybe a bit less than in the US, they mention the grape. They say Chardonnay, for example. They say Pinot Gris, which is, to be honest, the thing that would be that would have to be mandatory on a bottle. Because otherwise, how am I supposed to know what it's going to taste like? If it's written Chardonnay on the bottle, then I think I kind of understand where this is going.
Well, here we have that on all the bottles. It says what grape it is.
I know, that's amazing. But in France, there's a smoke and mirrors sometimes around wine, but it's slowly changing. I think. I think with there's a movement called natural wine here. It's a bit like real ale, is it?
Well, earlier I was talking about Georgia. Mm-hmm. That's where natural wine comes from. That's their process of making natural wine.
Okay, so we are basically copying this after being invaded by Italians and just with a wine that comes from Georgia. But this new movement is more about let's accept all the different varieties of what wine can be.
Yeah.
And you've got plenty different wines. And it's just wacky now. Because in the past, it used to be very standardized, very obscure, very dark, and a label on a wine bottle would be a bit like a blindfold in the past. Now it's starting to be like this wine is. They use words we can understand now.
Do you know what it sounds like? It sounds like wine is about to go through a similar thing that beer went through with the whole craft beer thing.
Yes, that's amazing. That's a very good analogy, I think.
And maybe if that's the case, I could get a little bit more excited about wine. Maybe that's what it needed, a bit of a revival, less stuffy, less secretive.
I f***ing smashed this fight.
Let's not get carried away. Smash the fight. I will never, ever betray beer. But I could see wine at the same time, maybe.
I kept something for the end, for the very end.
Go on then.
Okay? I'm not sure you want to hear this.
Go on.
Can you tell me about your favorite beer? The one I know about.
I think you're bringing this up because
please don't try to judge my move. Okay, just what is your favorite beer?
Let me just
in the world.
Okay, let me start by saying this. You
can't argue beforehand.
Hang on. I do have a beer that I've always said is my favorite one. However,
oh, there you go. Just withdrawing.
I see beer almost. You know how wine always has to sort of accompany food most of the time. I see beer almost as a food. There are different types of beer that I like at different times, and a lot of the time I might have a sort of beer course. I might have a sour for a starter, an IPA for the main meal, and then a stout for the pudding.
Good point. That's a very good point. I accept this.
All of this
what is your
me
favorite
trying to divert
beer?
from the subject.
Yes, please.
Duchesse de Bourguignon.
Okay.
Is
Duchesse.
Duchesse.
Hold on a second. Let me just judge what you just gave me. Duchesse de Bourguignon. Duchess of Burgundy,
yes.
Right? Is it Duchess of Burgundy?
It is, yeah.
Because Bourguignon translates to Burgundy, which is like one of the most famous in France for making wine.
Yes.
Okay. But that might be just a weird similarity. What is the color of that beer?
It's red.
Is it sour or is it just bitter?
It has both, actually.
Okay, both. So a bit of sourness.
Mm-hmm.
That's not
a lot of sourness. A lot of
sourness. That's weird.
It's one of its main characteristics.
Okay, so you know what other liquid has Burgundy in their name, is red and has loads of sourness? Wine.
Yeah, I don't drink that.
Red wine. Exactly. That's what I thought.
Because
so maybe,
the beer is still better.
Maybe just
even in a winemaking region, the beer is still better.
Exactly. The little young Joshua just wants to enjoy wine somewhere. And that's the best fake wine you have found, because it still is named beer, but it does look like wine in many aspects. So maybe deep inside,
listen,
you just want wine.
Alex, I would love to enjoy wine, but it's just not as good as beer. So I'm struggling to find it as enjoyable.
Okay. Fair enough. I enjoy this fight very much. I think it's...
Listen.
It brought so much cultural enlightenment on how we approach these two homey liquids somehow. I feel.
I think what what you should do, if you can, try and think of a wine that might give me more of an into the wine world. This natural wines thing sounds like it might be something I'd be excited about. But if you've got a recommendation for whatever wine, whatever it is, whatever you think that might open my eyes a bit, make me see more of it, I'd be willing to give it a go.
I will try and come up with the wine that would work. I'm leaning into white wine these days, white and natural wines, which is the closest you can get to beer from a wine point of view. And I'm giving this to you for free. I don't have to do this, but I'm going towards beer somehow. I love beer. I'm not gonna argue with beer. I just feel like it's a different moment in my life. I don't know. Anyways, it's been a pleasure to discuss this with you, man. I feel like we could do like 3, 4, 5. We could do a whole season on wine versus
Listen,
beer.
when we're able to again, we could go to a pub and talk about this for hours and hours and hours. I feel like this conversation could never end, but yeah.
I would go to a wine bar instead of a pub, but yeah,
Fine.
I agree.
We'll go to a wine bar. I'll bring a beer with me.
It's been a pleasure, man.
All right, man. Good to speak to you.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.